All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the Crowcast preview. I'm your host Scorpus, and with me tonight on the cast is Feenix. How you doing tonight?
I'm very well, mate. How are you going?
Yeah, not too bad. Looking forward to this game on the weekend. For those wondering, Mr. Mystery Guest has taken a little bit of a break from the preview cast, so it's just you and me tonight. How's your tips looking? I've had a quick look on the big footy boards, and have you given up, or are you still putting in your tips?
Piss off. That's not very nice.
Have you actually still been putting them in?
I may have forgotten last week. I can't remember. Oh, no, I think I put them in.
Okay, so just for our listeners who are wanting to know exactly what I'm referring to with Phoenix's tipping, he's currently on 58. Right down the bottom of the leaderboard on the big footy boards. I'm currently on 75, so it's pretty big difference. I don't think you managed to catch me, but
I just looked. I didn't put them in last week. I only got 2.
Yeah, you missed out.
Yeah, never mind.
Well, hopefully you'll put them in this week. We'll get on to the preview of our game against West Coast. It's at 7:10. It's on at 7:10 p.m. Adelaide time, but it's over in Perth at Domain Stadium. Well, we'll be getting onto Game of Crows a little bit later if you're still wondering about that, but just quickly we'll get into the teams first. For Adelaide, we've made 2 changes. Coming in, Scott Thompson, David McKay. Coming out, Ricky Henderson and Wayne Miller. For West Coast, they've just made the 1 change. Coming in is Jeremy McGovern. Coming out is Tom Cole. Pretty straightforward there. A couple of notable omissions. Most of the teams are going in at full strength at the moment. We've still got Brad Crouch playing SANFL. He's listed as an emergency, but the travelling emergency will be either Hendo or Miller, according to the Adelaide Football Club. So Brad Crouch will definitely be playing SANFL. And for West Coast, Natanui's apparently gotten over his injury concern from last week, and he'll be playing. And they've still got Dom Sheed on the injury list, probably their best player on the injury list at the moment. Last match, this was a great match for us last year. Round 22, 2015 Adelaide Oval. We won by 57 points against the eventual grand finals at home. Fantastic match. We kicked 8-0 in the first quarter. Jenkins kicked 6 against an undersized West Coast defence. Tomo had 26 touches, and for the opposition, Matty Prittis, 10 clearances. Phoenix, the changes, how happy are you to see Henderson make way?
Look, mate, it had to happen. I'm glad that they pulled the trigger on Hendo. Last week, he was noticeably poor in a winning combination, so he had to come out. The changes are pretty much as I expected, actually. I think Miller was due a bit of a rest. He wasn't having as much impact on games as he had at the beginning of the season. So Tomo obviously coming in for him, and D-Mac gives us a little bit more than Hendo in terms of overall game. So with his run and carry, hopefully with his better efforts inside, he'll give us a little bit more.
Yeah, I think it's that key thing with David bringing a bit more pressure than Henderson does at the contest. I know a lot of people on the big footy boards have been going on about how Henderson amassed some number of contested possessions last week out of his 20 touches, but to be honest, I don't think he's all that effective when it comes to his contested possessions. You know, we saw him run away from some contests or put in some really bad efforts. That's why I reckon he's been dropped this week. David McKay, I mean, he's not the player that I think will take us to the future, and I've been a bit negative on McKay in the past, but you know, if it's between Hendo or McKay, I think I'd rather have McKay in at this stage. So yeah, good to see Tomo back as well. I think he'll boost up our midfield a little bit there. West Coast, though, they have a pretty strong team across the board, Phoenix. What do you see being the key battle on the weekend?
Look, I think it's their ability to hold their forward line. They can be nearly as dangerous as us up forward. Not so much with their tools, although their tools are quality, but I think we've got the tools to cover them. But I think it's their mid-size forwards, Lacroix in particular, that are going to prove difficult to stop. I think Elliot Yeo, although he's been named on half-back, tends to run forward a little bit as well. So I think it'll be that if we can hold their forward line to a respectable total, then I think we'll go a long way to winning the game.
Oh, I totally agree with you on the mid-size and small forwards. I think that's been, like we keep mentioning on this cast, a bit of an issue for us over the opening rounds, at least of the season. And they've got Lacroix as well as maybe Cripps and Hill rotating through there. I think Cripps in the past has done a bit of damage against us. So, yeah, it'll be a tough matchup for guys like Brown, Laird, and Cheney. But the good news is that Laird came back last week and had 30 touches. So he's raring to go after his injury, and he was out for a couple of weeks. So yeah, I think we would be a bit better down back than having Hendo and Van Berle back there. So it could be a little bit of a little bit better in our favour down there. I was going to highlight the ruck duel. I reckon with Natanui and Lysette there, Jacobs actually, when I was looking at the stats, Jacobs has actually done all right against that combination in the past. The last time that he lost the hitouts would have been when we got smashed over in Perth last year, straight after the unfortunate incident with Phil Walsh. But he only lost the hitouts by 19 up against two pretty decent ruckmen. Do you reckon that we have what it takes to beat Natanui in the ruck this year, Phoenix, with Jacobs in his current form?
Look, if you'd asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have said no bloody way, because Source didn't look like he was anywhere near it. But very encouraging, particularly last week, but certainly over the last couple of weeks. And with Nick Nat probably carrying an Achilles to a small degree, I think Source will put up a good showing. And I think I mentioned on Tuesday night the key to keeping Nat Nui quiet or under control is to make him accountable. And the way we use Source in our transition play will keep Nick Nat accountable, and hopefully Source will be able to match him at centre bounces and then beat him around the ground.
Yeah, hopefully we can see Jacobs do another Mumford-like performance like we saw against GWS, where he was pretty great in that game. So yeah, if we can really get on top of Natanui, then that'll go a long way. As far as the defence goes, Phoenix, we've got Mackenzie. Well, for them, I mean, for West Coast, they've got Mackenzie, Schofield, and McGovern. McGovern, of course, returning this week. Who do you see going to whom in our forward line on the weekend?
Look, it's an interesting one. I wouldn't mind betting that Hearn gets a job on Tommy Lynch. They've got Will Schofield named there on Lynch, but I reckon Hearn as captain might be the one to take that responsibility. I see our lead-up forwards as a real key this week as well, with a slightly longer ground. And Tommy Lynch's engine, well documented. I think he's going to be a key for us this week. So hopefully he's had his quiet game behind him, and he gets the skates on, because I think he's going to cause them a lot of trouble if he gets on top of the ground.
Interesting you mentioned putting Hearn on him. I guess Hearn's quite an attacking player out of defence, so if he can sort of nullify Lynch, that will go a long way to helping West Coast to win. But on the other hand, we've got to have Lynch up and firing, because when he's up and running and he's getting his 25 plus touches and kicking a couple of goals, he becomes a real handful for the opposition. Because at the moment, we've got Walker, we've got Jenkins who just kicked 7 goals last week, and we've got McGovern who's taken big marks, not necessarily converting on the scoreboard yet, but he's always dangerous up there. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how their web-like defence goes against those sort of forwards, especially considering Jenkins has the knack of getting out the back. Yeah. It seems like their their defensive structure is well suited to killing the aerial contest, but I'm not so sure how it would go with blocking up our really speedy players, including Jenkins, who like to run through there and just do whatever and kick goals from the goal square. It'll be interesting to see how they sort of match up on us.
Well, I reckon, sorry to interrupt, I reckon you might see our forward line play pretty high this week. And I reckon it's Mitch McGovern's turn to repay the faith a little bit. Him and Lynch, I think, and even Tex are going to be up the ground a fair bit. And I think you'll see a lot of space in and behind our tall Jenkins, who I expect to play relatively deep. So I reckon we're going to try and stretch them going forward. We've got the manpower to do it. I don't think they've got the manpower to cover us with that sort of game plan. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Mitch, Tex, and Chief play pretty high with Jenkins and the two smalls at his feet. as isolated as possible in forward 50.
Yeah, and especially if we can get, Walker getting some marks around that forward 50 line. We know how good he is of a kick, from outside 50. And if we can get, Smith and Seed up there kicking goals from outside 50, we can really disrupt their, defensive matchups or whatever. So their structure and everything. So yeah, it's an interesting idea. I think the coach will probably do something like that. I have noticed though over the past couple of weeks that Jenkins has been playing a little bit further up the ground than I've really expected him to play. But I think playing him deep, especially in the goal square, is probably a better idea for this match.
Mm.
Yeah,
just because of the length of the ground, I think.
Oh yeah, of course. It's 10 meters longer than Adelaide Oval or thereabouts?
Yeah, 10 or 15, and it doesn't sound like much, but it's an extra kick or an extra bounce. So that's why our link men are going to be so important this week, I think.
Oh yeah, definitely. What do you think about the home ground advantage that West Coast has? Obviously, we're coming over to Perth. They've beaten pretty weak teams, I guess, away. I mean, at home at the moment. So they've beaten Brisbane, Fremantle, Richmond, Collingwood, St Kilda and Gold Coast at home. But they've lost to strong teams away, Hawthorn, Sydney, Geelong and the Bulldogs. How do you see their home ground advantage?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because these games are traditionally not close, or they certainly haven't been in the last few years.
We've been smashed.
The last time we beat them at Domain was in 2013, and we beat them by 86 points. And after that, it's been home ground winners by no less than 5 goals, and the last 2 have been more around the 8. I don't know. West Coast are just going for mine. I don't think they've shown anywhere near the form that they displayed last year, and I think they're right for the picking. So I think obviously home ground is worth the same to them as what Adelaide Oval is to us. But I think if we can overcome that early, quieten them down in the crowd, then I don't think it'll play much of a part, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's been a lot of media beat up at the moment about how strong, or the difference in strength between West Coast at home and away. But just looking at their wins, like I was mentioning before, the teams that they beat at home, they would have been expected to beat comfortably in every single one of those, matches that they played. It's really, this is their real first test at Domain Stadium against a contender. And I think that they've been, well, at least maybe their supporters and media, drinking a little bit of their own bathwater in the sense that they think that they're better at home than they could end up being. I know they've smashed us in the past at home, but since 2008, we've played 5 matches against West Coast at Domain, and we've actually beaten them twice. So that's not a terrible record. It's not the smashing that some people on the big footy boards have been suggesting, that we get slaughtered every time we go over there. We've actually, in the past 10 matches, won 4 out of those 10. So, and these are against teams, West Coast and Freo, they've been pretty good over the past couple of years, with the exclusion of this year. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting. I don't think it'll be as much of an advantage for them as they might be expecting. Last week, we'll just take a quick look at what they did. West Coast, they narrowly lost to the Bulldogs at Etihad Stadium. I think one of the keys for them was that Josh Kennedy was kept very quiet, only had 1 goal. The Bulldogs' defence was fantastic on the night. They also got destroyed in possessions and contested possessions. Possessions, Bulldogs had 446 to 322, and contested possessions 153 to 114. That is an absolute midfield destruction. Can we do the same, Phoenix, this week?
Well, I've noticed a few comments on the board about the inclusion of Tomo and therefore the overload of inside mids that we seem to have this week, and I think you'll find that's exactly the reason why. I think our game plan is going to be to get first use as much as possible, because I think they're very vulnerable in the midfield. Pritis was down last week. I think you might find one of our mids gets a job on Matty Pritis this week. He had 29 touches, but for him, that's not quite the output that you would normally expect. So yeah, I think we can do a job on them inside at the contest, to be honest with you. And the key then will be whether we can spread well enough and distribute with enough efficiency to take advantage of it.
Yeah, well, just on Pritis, I mean, you say he had 27 touches. He was leading their clearances with 9, and Shuey had 6. But apart from those 2 players, they really don't have those, really strong inside guys that can win the ball straight out of the middle. We know that they've got strengths on the outside with guys like Gaff, who's who's a fantastic outside player, and I think he'll be.
And he's killed us before. Gav.
Oh, he has done a number on us before. I'm pretty worried about him, but yeah, I just think that if we have Douglas maybe doing a job like he's done in the past, he hasn't been in the best form, but he's maybe been playing that tagging role a little bit. We know that McKay tends to do a job a little bit as well. That they could really shut down some of their inside players, and with our extra guys, Sloan, Tomo, Lyons, Matty Crouch, I mean, that's a strong midfield core. And I just don't think that playing that many inside midfielders is that much of a concern, because we know that how strong Tomo and Matt Crouch are on the inside, and that's their main strengths, right? But Lyons is a very effective forward, and he's very good when he gets around goals. And we've seen him, he kicked that amazing goal from the boundary line open up our goal kicking last week. Douglas, his goal kicking's been a bit off, but he's not too bad in the forward line either. We know Sloan can get down there and he can play outside if needed. So, yeah, I'm not worried about playing all these inside mids. I think it's a little bit overblown. The only issue that I could see is that in some of the matches in the past, Tomo's had a bit of an issue with getting sucked into the contest and not really knowing when it's his turn to get the ground ball or the stoppage or whatever. So if he can, manage to play his role to exactly how we want it to, and he doesn't get sucked in as often, I think we'll be in with a chance.
Yeah, well, the way he played against GWS was the way we wanted him to play.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think, we're never going to be classed as a quick team with our current squad, but where our strength lies when our midfield's working well is quick ball movement. And I think that's going to be the key, to clear the contest as quickly as possible with some aggressive handball and some good running. That's going to offset any perceived lack of pace that we have in terms of leg speed.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily that we're slow overall as a team. I think that a lot of our outside players are quite pacey, with Smith and Seed, even Atkins and his ability to evade traffic and find time for himself. We've got Cameron who'll be rotating through their bets. All these players, I think we don't necessarily need a quick midfield necessarily when we have the guys who are smart in the centre. Tomo is pretty nifty with some of his handballs. Matty Crouch, I think, was fantastic last week with some of his inside work. Lyons has also been, career best season for him. He's been absolutely fantastic again with some of his ability to, hit handballs out of the clearances. We don't need the speed from those guys. We need to be able to, like you said, chain the handballs out to the outside and get in the hands of Smith and Seed. That said, Phoenix, what if they tag Smith and Seedsman? What do you reckon will happen?
Well, it's not a dumb idea, really. You could see Maston playing quite closely on Smith in almost a run with role, particularly contested situations. But I think you'll find that for a large portion of the game, anyway, West Coast is going to be looking to win the game, and I think I don't think they have the midfield strength to devote too many players to run with roles. They're giving a fair bit away if they start doing that, and I think surprisingly, I think we actually bat one or two deeper through midfield rotations than they do. So I'd be surprised. I think the bloke that they might try and shut down is Rory Sloan. But aside from that, I couldn't see them really sitting too hard on our runners like Smith and Seedsman. And really, with the manpower they've got, Maston and Wellingham lining up on those two blokes, I don't think they're necessarily got the skills or the tools to shut them down anyway.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned Maston, because I think he hasn't been all that effective this season. I was actually, as well with Redden coming over from Brisbane, I think he's not been nearly as good as I've seen him at Brisbane. He's been, the fifth string, maybe even sixth string mid for them and not really doing all that much. And I agree. I think, maybe early in the season we were all worried about our midfield and how strong it was going to be. But as far as I can see, the West Coast midfield, they've got their three really strong guys, Pritter, Shuey and Gaff, but we have three just as strong guys in Sloan, Tomo and Matty Crouch in the centre. And then you're adding in guys like Lyons, who's been fantastic. Atkins has been fantastic. I think you're right. I think we might bat one or two deeper this game.
Yep.
What about... So West Coast is currently sitting 7th on the ladder and we're 8th. Why do you reckon West Coast haven't been as good this year as last year?
Look, I think it is cattle to a degree. I mean, their forward line has kept them in a lot of games and won them a lot of games. I mean, Josh Kennedy has been a beast up forward for them. Darling's a good number 2. And I think from that perspective, they're hard to hold if they get first use. And obviously, they do have a couple of really good in and under players, Pritis in particular, and then they've got Gaff on the outside who can apart. So, particularly at home, they start getting a run on, and I think, they can cut a side up. But away, where they don't have that crowd, that swell of support from the crowd, and they've got to do it, without that. I actually don't think they've got the matchups or the talent in their team currently through the midfield to be able to hold. And Western Bulldogs showed that up. I mean, the Bulldogs have got so many out at the moment that they really should not have been West Coast when you look at the lineups, and yet they absolutely slaughtered them because of their good midfield. So I think the midfield is both West Coast strength and weakness. And then if you look down back, that's not a defensive six that actually, strikes fear into the heart. So, I think that's where other teams can get on top of them as well, just by scoring.
Yeah, and it's not like any of West Coast's, lines, defence, midfield or forward are terrible. Like they don't really have, like the Collingwood terrible backline syndrome or anything. But I agree. Their defence, it's been good. And I think it was particularly good last year when they were being undermanned. They had to try some pretty creative things down back. But at the moment, it just seems like it's a fairly standard setup. There's nothing too surprising about their defence. The midfield, I think a lot of their players are down this year compared to last year. They've still got guns in there, like we've been mentioning. But just across the board, I mean, they haven't lost any players from their team. There's no real, there wasn't any retirements last year. No one was really traded or anything. And they even brought in guys like Redden and Jetta, who's not playing. I mean, Jetta I don't rate particularly, but they tried to add into their team. They just haven't been as good. So, I think, it's probably time that we get onto our tips and margin. I think I'm going to tip us by 3 goals, I think, this week. I think we're in with a real chance. A couple of weeks ago, I wouldn't have said at all that we could have beaten West Coast away, but I think the way that West Coast are travelling and the good form that we're in at the moment and our turnaround, it'll be good for us. And I'm gonna give Walker best on ground. How about you, Phoenix?
Mm. Yeah, well, I've been bullish about the Crows this week, all week basically. I think it's a massive game for us in terms of our finals aspirations, or for both clubs really. And I'm going to run with the history and say that we're going to win by 5. I think either team's going to win by at least 5, and I think it'll be us.
5 goals, right?
Yeah, 5 goals. And I'm actually looking for a Rory Sloane best on ground performance. I also think it's a very big game for Kyle Chaney. I think his ability to not be exposed as he sometimes can be down back, together with his overall solid form, because he has been playing very well. He just seems to get caught once or twice, often not through any fault of his own. But if he can put his best foot forward this week, he'll probably get Lacrara at some stage, I'd imagine.
I think he's been building. I think he's been in really good form over the past couple of weeks. So I agree. I think if we can get Cheney, to keep building. I mean, he hasn't played 100 games yet, so
that's right.
I think that a lot of the people that follow the Crows and everything are a bit harsh on Cheney at times. I think it's still a pretty key component to our team. So, I agree.
Crows by 5, mate. 5 goals.
Been an interesting one, because if you think that, maybe you should put a bit of money on, because I think the odds are looking pretty good for a Adelaide win at the moment, out to $2.50 or something. So, maybe take a look at that. Anyway, time to get into Game of Crows. All right, so we had the first 3-pointer win of the season last week. Joel Constable, he decided that Lever would have a career best game and have 11 marks, and it turns out the Lever had 13 marks. Career best. I think he was probably the best game he's ever played, Jake Lever, so I'm more than happy to give Joel the 3 points this week in Game of Crows. The current leaderboard has Joel sitting on 4 points. He actually won a 1-pointer a couple of weeks back. Mr. Mystery Guest Vardy Magic also on the 1 point. Special mention to Vardy Magic, because he said that Sammy Jacobs would kick 2 goals. look, it was a pretty good prediction coming into the game. He kicked one goal and he missed one that he really should have kicked. So Vardy was pretty close to having those another point on the board. For those who are new to Game of Crows, just a quick rundown of what you have to do. Basically, it's a prediction game regarding the upcoming Crows match of the week. You have one of two options. You have to make a bold claim, which is something that hasn't happened this season. That is worth 1 point. Or you can make a crazy claim, which hasn't happened ever, for 3 points. So in the case of Jake Lever's 11 marks, he'd never had 11 marks before. That's why it was worth 3 points. The winner at the end of the season, we will send you a case of beer. You can enter through Twitter, Spreaker, comments, Facebook, Big Footy, all the usual places. Just hand in your nomination before the game starts. And I'm going to give a little bit of a hint to people, because the things that we've seen winning this season haven't been too outside the box, but have been just within the rules. So something like, Lever's career best being 10 marks, him having 11 marks, it's only one above. So I think that's a good strategy for this game. Phoenix, this week, what is your Game of Crows prediction?
Well, my Game of Crows prediction is that Mitch McGovern is going to kick 5 goals.
Oh, that's a good one. I think, now that you mentioned Mitch McGovern, I'm going to say he's not going to kick all his shots on goal are going to be goals. Like, it won't miss. Is that
won't miss.
He's been missing a fair bit, or is that not enough of a bold claim?
Oh, he's been pretty scratchy around goals. But I think you need a minimum amount of scoring attempts. So it can't be 1 from 1. So maybe if he like 3+ scoring shots.
Yeah, that all go through.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's...
What do you reckon?
Well, I mean, his career best for kicking goals, he kicked 3 against Gold Coast. He put all 3 of those through the sticks, but he's kicked 15 goals, 12 over his career. So, yeah, interesting. I think...
I'll leave it up to you, mate. It's your competition. That's just my input.
Yeah, maybe... Yeah. I think I'll stick with it. I mean, yeah, he's had a pretty interesting run with his shots on goal. In fact, his first game, he kicked 0-3.
Yeah.
Didn't realise that. So, yeah, it hasn't been great. 1 goal, 3 last week. I think I'll keep that one in at the moment for Game of Crows. Everyone else can get in their predictions, get in your tips, because I think that you're still in with the shot, especially if you nail a classy 3-pointer. I think there's some really interesting things you could do with those 3-pointers. So, yeah, like I said, my advice, go through and look at some of the stats from people this season and try and find something that's just a little bit more than what's been happening. Could be a real...
Damn Squid reckons he just fell off his chair. I don't know whether it was about my nomination for 5 goals or your nomination for him not missing.
I don't know. I think we're on the McGovern bandwagon because he's going over to his home state. He's playing against Jeremy McGovern, his brother. It's a big occasion for McGovern. I think he might be in with a chance this week to pull on his career best game and put the yips behind him, kick a bag. Should be.
Do you reckon we're just going to see a hanger fest down in our forward lines and Jeremy and Mitch both trying to take a hanger at the same time and knocking each other out or something like that?
It'll be amazing to see them try and take all those contested marks down the forward line. I think Mitch might have a bit of wood on Jeremy, considering Jeremy's form this season compared to last season. It'd be an interesting one to see how those two brothers go. And I think Mitch, from what I've seen, might be just a little bit better overhead in those contested situations. I think Jeremy's a bit better on the uncontested, but we'll see. Jeremy's still a good player. I think that probably wraps up Game of Crows. So yeah, just get in your predictions and everything through the usual channels. We'll move on to our SANFL team. We're playing Norwood this week, Sunday, 1:40 p.m. This game's actually live on 7 Mate, so if you're cruising around on Sunday, chuck that on the TV, see how our twos are going. This is at Cooper Stadium. The ins coming in for us, we've got Miller, Henderson, and a bunch of top-up players coming out. McKay going to the AFL, and Van Berle's actually got a foot injury, so he will be out. Not sure how long at the moment, but he won't play. Knight and Shaw, their injuries are dragging on a little bit. Knight's is now probably 6 weeks into his ankle. Shaw, his concussion has been really devastating for him. He's kept him out for a while, and Hampton will be seen after the bye. So this match, what are you looking forward to seeing against Norwood this week, Phoenix?
I want to see a couple of players really make an effort to make the selectors start taking them into consideration. Cam Ellis-Yeoman in particular, I want him to take a game by the scruff of the neck. He's keeping on getting his lazy 25 and sort of having good average games. He needs to, if he wants to break into the AFL team and be a part of it, or even being in the conversation, to ramp his disposable count. So I'd really like the likes of Mitch Grigg, Mellis Yeoman, those blokes to step it up a notch.
Interesting you mentioned Ellis Yeoman, because I was watching some of the SANFL game from last week. It was live streamed, so it's good that I could see it over here in Victoria. And I was actually pretty disappointed with Ellis Yeoman and Grigg. They racked up the numbers, but Ellis Yeoman in particular, some of his disposals were just shocking. And this is at SANFL level too, which, poor disposal on SANFL is not going to cut in AFL at all. So, I think he was good at the start of last season. He's just fell away a bit. And Grigg, I can't see him making the AFL team anytime soon. I think he's behind a number of players in our twos at the moment. Even guys like Wig, they could be getting games ahead of Grigg at the moment. So, it'd be nice to see someone really put their hand up. I think the guy who's probably closest to selection at the moment is probably Troy Menzel. I thought he was really solid last week in the SANFL. He was doing a lot of things that you'd want to see from an AFL player in terms of finding space and getting to the right positions in the forward line to kick goals. And he was burnt so many times. So Menzel for me, Brad Crouch as well. I know they're doing whatever with him to get him up to scratch for AFL, but I think those two are most likely to come in hopefully after the bye and really build for us in the second part of the season. And Miller being dropped to the SNFL as well. I think he can get a bit of touch in the footy, and hopefully that will translate into getting more disposals at AFL level in the future. But it's definitely not the end for Miller. He will be back soon enough. Other matches this round, it's a really hard round for tipping. There's a lot of interesting games coming on this weekend. We'll start with Port versus Bulldogs, Saturday afternoon, Adelaide Oval. Can Bulldogs win this one on the road, Phoenix?
Look, I don't think so, mate. Port are going okay, and obviously, having being an AFL reserves team, they've probably got a little bit more depth than the Doggies. I would imagine Port will get up this week.
Yeah, it's a tough one to tip. Normally, I'd go the Bulldogs just on the form that Port's beat up Collingwood last week, but they haven't been in great form. But the fact that it's at Adelaide Oval, I think Bulldogs travelling they're not a particularly good travelling team, and Port at home, they might just have the personnel to do it. Interestingly, because Port's gone in unchanged, they've still got their extremely weak backline at the moment, but with the Bulldogs forward line, I think that probably won't trouble Port too much. They just don't have the forward power down there. What about Geelong versus North? This is at Etihad Stadium on Saturday night, the same time that our game is on. Two top four contenders going at each other, probably at a ground that favours North Melbourne slightly. I see North getting up against Geelong. I think Geelong have been pretty disappointing recently, even against GWS at home.
See, now you messed me up before because I thought you were still talking SANFL, so I'm thinking Port SANFL. I'm thinking, what the hell? But I will say that I reckon that the power will get up over the Bulldogs.
Yeah, I was meant the Western Bulldogs in the
sorry.
In the AFL.
So I'm thinking, hang on, the Maggies are playing Sturt this week. What are you talking about? Anyway, I don't think the Cats are going that great, actually. And I thought North played pretty well down in Hobart last week, so I'd expect the Kangaroos to get up by a few.
And what about GWS versus Sydney Sunday twilight at Spotless Stadium?
Really, really interesting game, this one. Sydney, I think, have been the form team of the competition over the last 2 to 3 weeks. Giants will be happy to be home, I think, after a couple of tough weeks on the road. Let me just have a look here. Who's in and out? GWS have got a couple of solid ins.
Well, they're bringing back Griffin
and Reid. Yeah. And Downey's in the squad at least. I'm going to tip the Giants in a thriller to bounce back, and I think that would be their first win against the Swannies if they got up?
No, they've beaten Sydney in the past. There was one game that was a real upset a couple of seasons ago when GWS was still relatively shit. They got up over the Swans, but I'm going to go against you, Phoenix, on this one. I'm going to tip the Sydney Swans purely just on form. I think it will be a really close one. Could go either way, but even though it's an away game for the Swans, I just think that their class throughout the ground and the fact that they've been, absolutely destroying games recently with their form, I think that has a lot to say about how they'll go against the GWS Giants. That said, GWS are a much better team at home, so yeah, you never know. It will definitely be an interesting one.
It's going to be an interesting game, yeah.
Could definitely be match of the round, one to tune into. Unfortunately, though, Sunday twilight. What are they thinking putting this match of the round on at such an awful time slot? It's just unbelievable.
I just hate the time slot. I reckon that the players would hate it. I reckon it contributed to St Kilda's lacklustre. Imagine being a travelling team, travelling interstate. I know that's not what Sydney are doing this week, but imagine St Kilda last week travelling interstate and playing Sunday afternoon.
Awful.
Bloody hell. I reckon it probably added about 3 or 4 goals to the margin, to be honest with you. Look, I hate it, but there you go. They still want to schedule these games, so I guess they've got to fit them in somewhere.
It's better than Sunday night, you'd say.
Well, yeah, do they even do Sunday nights anymore?
Well, they tried it a few seasons ago, and everyone hated it. So, yeah, good thing that's not on. But we do have the Monday game this week because of the Queen's birthday. So this is, of course, a traditional clash. Melbourne versus Collingwood at the MCG. I think Melbourne will get up in this one pretty easily, which is surprising considering Collingwood's had the wood on Melbourne for the past 10 years easily. But Collingwood looked absolutely atrocious last week against Port Adelaide, the worst I have ever seen them. They were terrible up forward, terrible down back. And I think Melbourne could win this one by 10 goals.
It's very interesting, Collingwood's play at the moment. I mean, Buckley's been under pressure. We had Mick McGowan coming out in the media today, I think, and bagging Pendlebury's captaincy. I reckon Melbourne will do a number on them too, and I think that it might just be the beginning of the end for Buckley and his entourage. I think it might initiate a bit of a changing of the guard, particularly as I think there's some rumblings about Eddie's tenure too, isn't there, as Prez at Collingwood as well. I think someone else is starting to build up a ticket.
Interesting. I haven't heard anything about that. But I'm not surprised.
I can't remember the guy's name. Yeah, well, Eddie's been there for, 12 years or something?
Yeah, and I think, he's been good when Collingwood have been good, but I think his appointment and continual backing of, Nathan Buckley has been, we've seen their slide since, they really should have been pushing for more premierships a couple of years back when they won that one in 2010 or 11.
Yeah.
2010, I think. So, yeah, they had a young team then to win that flag, and they really should have been pushing for more, but they've pushed out players. They've gone downhill massively. They've dropped Travis Cloke this week again. And, I mean, the one thing that I could see saving Buckley is that they know internally that they've got quite a lot of injuries at the moment. So I think they're probably, thinking, oh, maybe we're underperforming because we've got, guys like Elliott out, a couple of, Dane Swan's out as well. But I just think they're underperforming even despite their injuries. They've been, the injuries have been there, but they've just been awful. So
yeah, they just haven't looked like it. Nicky, I think, pointed out Max Barry's squiggle measuring Collingwood's performance since Buckley took over, and it's pretty damning. It's pretty damning. So I'd expect the D's to get up. In fact, if the D's don't get up, it'll be a very disappointing result for them. They're around about the mark for that 8th spot. I expect them to win quite comfortably.
Yeah, Melbourne are a hot and cold team, but I think that Melbourne will be doing pretty well this year, but they could put in an Essendon performance and get smashed, but I just don't think that'll happen. Any other matches this week that you think are interesting?
Well, in terms of tipping, the Tigers v the Suns is going to be an interesting one to try and get right. Similarly, the Lions and the Dockers, although you'd probably expect the Dockers, who've just got a little bit more class, the Lions are really just going, and there's another bloke that's under the pump pitch, as well as Lee Matthews in terms of the administration.
Brisbane. Don't know what's going on up there. They've been, it's really sad for their supporters and everything because they've just been consistently at the bottom of the ladder almost since they won those premierships, more than 10 years ago now. They've just had, they don't look like improving at all. The one thing that I could see saving them this week against Fremantle is that Freo are crap and tanking and it's at the Gabba, but I don't know. I just have no faith in Brisbane to win anything, really.
I mean, it just goes to show. I mean, all that premiership era team was getting paid unders. It was well documented. and Maguire leading the charge to rid them of their retention allowances, and during a time where the Lions had to rebuild, on top of a couple of crazy Vossies. It's just killed that club, and I can't see them resurrecting anytime soon either.
Yeah, it's interesting because they've still got, they've got young players that I rate, and I think, Shaki will be a really fantastic forward for them, but it's just really surprising that they've been at the bottom for so long, and yet they just don't have the same level of quality, low draft picks, or high draft picks that we've seen from, like a Melbourne team, where Melbourne have got all these stars throughout the midfield from their, pick ones, pick twos, threes, whatever. And Brisbane have had relatively similar picks, but they've just burnt them, and they've picked players who have either been, mediocre. Like they picked Jared Polek with a first round pick, really early, and he just pissed off back to Adelaide, and he's not even, I don't think he's first round pick quality, to be honest. So
no, in retrospect, it's a bit of a tambling, I think.
Yeah, I mean, well, probably not as bad as Richard Tambling. I still think he's a bit better than Tambling was terrible, but Pollock's all right, but not first round pick quality. And they've had issues with retention, but they just need to nail their picks and stop trading them away for spuds and whatever. It's just shocking. But oh well, sad for Brisbane.
Yep.
Yeah, so got a couple of rapid fire questions to finish off this Crowcast preview. First one. Was the Tom Hawkins suspension fair?
No, I think he should have got 2.
Really? 2 weeks?
Well, mate, you're a Victorian. You would have listened to SEN and Bartlett and Patrick bloody Smith crapping on like a pair of old
He deserved
women.
1, but not 2.
Well, put it this way. I think where the issue lies is not so much in what Hawkins did, but how other off-the-ball incidents have been judged. So I'm quite happy with Hawkins getting a week for that. He's lucky he didn't do any damage. The throat's a pretty exposed sort of an area to be copping a whack in.
Yeah, a bit of a dick move by Hawkins. I think he deserved the week, but yeah, pretty straightforward, that one. What about the second and final one? Is Aaron Young the worst player to kick 25 goals in half a season?
I don't actually mind him. I actually think for all his lack of class, I guess you'd say, he has a dip. So I'm not as put off by Aaron Young as some. I don't mind him. Bloke has a crack. He has a crack.
Yeah, definitely. I think he plays to his certainly his ability. I think he's probably hit his peak at the moment. I don't rate him particularly highly, but it's been pretty surprising he's managed to kick 25 goals. He's been one of Port's better players, so maybe that says something about Port or how good Aaron Young is as a player, but yeah, interesting that he could kick 25 goals. Anyway, I think that closes out the Crowcast preview for this week. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at BF Crowcast, or also on Facebook, BF Crowcast. We're on iTunes, all that stuff. Give a listen to the Jake Lever interview from Tuesday Night Live. If you haven't done it already, it's a fantastic interview. Goes for about 20 minutes or so with a young gun. Yeah, definitely worth listening to that cast if you haven't done so already. It's a bye week next week, so we won't be on for the preview, which is nice. I'll get a little bit of a break, but Phoenix, you'll be back on Sunday for the review cast, 7 p.m. Am I right?
Indeed.
Yep.
Indeed, yes. Wrapping up the win.
So what are we doing this week during the bye week? Is people going to be still tuning into Tuesday Night Live?
Yeah, we did have a couple of plans that were scuttled, but we are going to have a bit of a bye-week extravaganza. So watch the boards and watch Twitter and Facebook. As soon as I work out or line up a few ducks that I'm currently juggling, then we'll have a decent lineup.
Yeah, it should be a good cast to listen to that during the bye week. Don't forget Crowbar on Mondays. They're a fantastic group of guys doing their cast. And
did it from the pub last week. It was awesome.
Oh yeah,
yeah. They actually went to a pub after the game and did their podcast from the pub.
Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah, definitely check out the Crowbar. It's a great cast. And yeah, get your tips in for the Game of Crows. You can win that case of beer. Hopefully someone will take it out. And yeah, we will be back in 2 weeks for... in fact, we might be back on Wednesday because we've got a Thursday match, don't we, in round 14 against North Melbourne. So yeah, we'll be back a little bit earlier than usual, but if you keep following us in all the relevant places, it'll be easy to find us. So yeah, we'll see you guys next week.
Very good, Scorpus. See you later.